Hey everybody, it's Libby DeLucian again with Woot Recruit, your go-to recruiting program for the high turnover industries, such as cleaning, lawn care, landscaping, roofing, and construction. Any service-based industry, we're your recruiter. We are the first recruiting program tailored exclusively for the service-based industry, turning recruitment into a growth engine. Stay tuned to transform hiring. So, on this episode, we are going to talk about a subject that is actually really interesting, and it's about what drives results when it comes to recruiting, like really understanding what drives results when it comes to actually some really big words here. It's the psychographic, demographic, and geographics of recruiting. So, I have a guest today, and it's actually Chris DeLucian, my husband, but he's also the CTO of Woot Recruit, and he's been sitting in Woot Recruit. I'll let Chris do a quick intro, but tell us how long you've been with Woot Recruit, kind of what you do from start to finish, like from the beginning of Woot Recruit, what you did, what you've done with customers, and then now what you sit in the seat you sit in, and how you help grow the company.
Yeah. So I would say that, my name is Chris. So the CTO of Woot Recruit. And I guess what I would say is that my specialization, or really who I am, that knack that I have is very technical. So I came from an audio engineering background, traveled throughout the world. So again, US, Canada, South America, and parts of Europe as well, with some names of people that you might know. So I had a lot of big name artists. I like to mention the Black Keys, Kings of Leon, MGMT for those that are more in the low key. But what came from that is, coming into Woot Recruit, a big part of what I did transitioning through that is, through the COVID years, being with Woot Recruit now for 3 years, I helped really to help build it and create it from your first image of, this beast, which is now, Woot Recruit and the system behind it. So I helped to really build that, break ground with that as well. Really being the person who was in it every single day, diving into Indeed, into really the metrics behind it, the data, the analytics, what's driving results, I guess would be the best way to position it. So that was a large part of my core focus over the last 3 years. Then being able to really help train our team now to, provide some really effective results that I think not a lot of people are really doing out there right now.
No, I will say that, Chris helped us grow this from like just at the beginning, it was me and Paul. And he said as an account manager and customer service rep, he said as sales, did demos. He's done every seat here at the company. But his perspective is great because he has helped many, many of our customers grow and scale their businesses through our recruiting processes. But also his perspective is great because he is the data behind everything. So everything we do is not through theory, it's through proven processes. And so Chris is that like technical person that researches that data and comes up and brings it to us.
Yeah.
So it's a great combo now that we have. And he's helped us build this to essentially sitting in the seat he's always wanted, which was the CTO, Chief Technical Officer. And he's been able to do that. But that being said, let's dive into some nerdy stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's what Chris wanted to talk about, was some of the more technical things when it comes to getting results, because people want to recruit and they're like, I need to hire 10 people in this area and like in 3 days or in a week. But sometimes we can't pull something out of nothing, or maybe it's like demographics aren't right, or the geographics aren't lining up. And so Chris, we're going to dive into that.
Mm-hmm.
And, we can get started. So we have the 3 topics, right? It's the psychographics, demographics, and geographics. And so which one do you want to dive into first?
So before we do that, what I would love to do is to help clarify, some of the misconceptions that people might have with recruiting and hiring. And that goes a lot into the tools themselves and just, production of results. People just say, I want people at my door. I want to go ahead and get it done. Just make it happen. But with some very strict guidelines on how to do that. That being said, I would say that the tools themselves are probably only about 20% of the entire picture. My passion, my drive is cognitive psychology, and recruiting, hiring has a major part with psychology because it's all about the people.
Well, I mean, COVID taught us this, and I hate to always bring up COVID and blame COVID, but the days of just putting a crappy job description on Indeed and expecting people to show up to a crummy job with a crummy boss and getting a crummy pay are over. COVID accelerated that. Accelerated that. It was coming anyways. It just accelerated it. And so what it did was it made us have to change the way we look at recruiting. It made us have to change the way we look at our pay and our benefits and how we're, and inclusion and diversity and culture. And it brought all these to the forefront to really challenge us as business owners and to have to pivot to what we used to do versus how we do it now. And the people, to me, that are still struggling are the ones that are still doing it the pre-COVID way, and they are just got their heels dug in the sand, and they just refuse to change. Like, I'm just paying them; they should just do the job anyways. And I'm like, yeah, like when your competitors are just offering like just a lot of bit better, it's going to be harder to recruit. And I'm not trying to not sell my recruiting software here, but, someone made a statement the other day that if you have a great job and great culture and great pay, any recruiting process is going to work for you. And that's kind of true, guys. Like, any recruiting process is going to work if you're like the Google of companies with culture and pay and like sleep pods and all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah, everyone's going to want to work for you. And that's when Chris means that the tools are only 20%.
Yeah.
So let's dive into it, Chris.
Oh, sure.
Which one do we want to get started with?
So I think it would be great really to kind of just recap again when we talk about, what really drives people to really deliver those results. Or when we say results, what we mean is people showing up at your door and people who actually are committed to the idea of working for you. And a lot of things that play into that are the psychographics, the demographics, the geographics, all about the applicant, whereas before it was all about the company.
Yeah, 100%. Gone are the days when I can just post something on Indeed and people just show up at my door.
Yeah.
Gone.
Yep. And so with the acceleration of technology, people started to really take that as the advantage. And now it's shifting back into a world or an era of where people are now starting to kind of shift back into focus because there's such an abundance of technology. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really one of the strong suits that I want to dive into here, and kind of the magic behind what we do here at WootRecruit that makes it so effective with the recruitment program that Libby puts on. So that being said is, diving into just some concepts that really help break ground with delivering results are a lot of these things like we talked about. It's getting to know the applicants, getting to know your employees on a much closer level. Now, for context, what I've done actually as a CTO and also sitting in the day-to-day and actively helping those accounts is sitting alongside a lot of these companies who maybe there's like one or two things that they're really struggling with, or for whatever reason we can't get some traction. We'll sit down, we'll jump into a meeting and we'll break it down. And a lot of these things are sitting down and understanding, identifying, great, well, tell me about your employees. Tell me, what's their living situation. And I'll pause and I'll wait. And some people, it's really hard to think, oh, shoot, I actually don't know. But I think those are the really the most important parts about understanding what works and the reason why people stick with your company and how they came about there in the first place. So when we talk about all these psychographics, demographics, geographics, you're talking about things like their living situations. You're talking about.
But go into detail with living situations,
Yeah.
because so I'm going to play the devil's advocate over here. Well, what's it to me what their living situation is? Because that's personal, but that's not what we mean by that.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by living situation?
Yes. So when you talk about, let's just put it out there. As a business, we're putting that out there, and we're like, you know what, we're paying great. Why aren't people coming to us? We pay good money. Just do the work, get out there. But there's a lot more that goes into that comes to play. And what we don't typically realize is living situation encompasses a whole breadth of possibilities. You're talking about human nature here. And nothing is absolute, but we can still look at clues in like who they are and their living situation to see if things are really going to click with the right people. So some ideas here are really, is the person who really is, let's say, an employee or you're trying to get to work for your company, are they the breadwinners of the house? Are they, let's say, are they married? Do they have children? If they're married, do both spouses work, or is only one working? So again, I'm speaking to both sides here of, we have a lot of our lawn care people as well as the cleaning companies with WootRecruit. And there's two different dynamics at play. Some, the living situations could be that you have, let's say, a single mother with one child. That demand for a standard of living is going to look wildly different than the person who is the breadwinner, who is a husband who has a wife, and maybe they have, let's say, the irrigation or something like that, where they have two kids that they're providing for. It's understanding, to what level or to what extent is really going to compel them to continue through with the idea. And I want to keep emphasizing this, the idea of working for you. Because again, nothing is absolute, especially with people, nothing is absolute. And so, like you say, Libby, even though you got them to your door and you offered them a position, it's not over.
Nope. So, when we talk about the living situations, I think, another thing to think about this is, and I've taught this before, is creating the avatar for your company, right? And that goes into the avatar. It's like, we realized and organized it for a little while back in 2022 that we weren't really doing a good job. It was almost doing a disservice to hire a single mom. Our scheduling wasn't great. They needed more consistency in their job. And so when we would interview, we would know that we have to be upfront. If maybe, we knew that going up front, we were very clear about the pay, and sometimes that it could fluctuate because we wanted to make sure that we didn't put other people, in a place of vulnerability when it came to their finances. So creating a perfect avatar for your company, that would go into it. Like, hey, a perfect employee for me is head of household, maybe so many dependents, or those kind of things. We don't want to be at all ever talking about like discrimination or anything like that. But we're talking about what will my pay attract and sustain.
And I want to layer into that is, and that plays into the standard of living or the cost of living.
Yes.
Which we actively use as a tool to make sure that we understand what's under the hood of what's going to perform well in different locations, different cities. Again, we have different markets. They all perform differently. Dallas, for instance, will be completely different than Colorado.
And so will the pay, though.
Yeah.
And so will the pay. So, and as if we're all in the same industry, because we're industry friends, because I own a service business too. So I have a lot of friends, and I could be paying the same pay that someone that's my friend in California, but the pay would be different because of the cost of living. So maybe my pay isn't that great, or maybe it is. So don't compare yourself to your industry friends when it comes to pay. Compare yourself to your local competitors or your local people that you're competing with on a local level, so that more, so you're more in line with what is relevant for your location versus your industry friends.
Yes. And and I want to say this because I know that there's different types of models of companies out there, and some that structure the model that's not necessarily the greatest pay or the biggest pay, but there's an offset of different things like providing vehicles or different things that would leverage other people's curiosity. But one thing to mention, because I wanted to emphasize that point, is that money only matters to a certain degree. From that extent forward, it's all about really what's behind it, what's behind the company or the benefits that's going to be the driving force. So there's a balance in every market alongside that. Mm-hmm. And I want to play into even further with living situations, keeping that in mind, where we talk about the geographics. It's where people live. It goes down even further to that. Of course, we know in terms of targeting, you have your own. You've already probably done the research yourself for your customer base, your client base, where you're going to target your leads, where's the hot spots, and usually what we see is from the WootRecruit perspective with hiring is that there's the ideal of I want to get people in this area, I want to target this location because I'm getting tons of business. I need somebody in that location.
I only laugh because we see this all the time.
Yes, and so. What I've had to do before is I've had to sit down and really break down what that really means from the other side of the coin. So if you're talking about applicants, are they going to live in the 1%? Are they going to live in those closed communities where you're generating that business?
Where all those leads are coming from, where there are those technicians going to live in the gated communities or in these communities where we're getting all these leads from? Like my phone may be ringing, asking me to service certain areas, but if I can't find employees that can drive there consistently without quitting and pay them high enough to keep them driving there, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it's the simple concept that often gets overlooked, but it's the concept of you can't get something from nothing. And that's the biggest point to make here is make sure that whatever you're doing and whatever strategy you're putting in place, again, something that we really look at here is that we position the right markets to figure out where the people are. Because again, if you're trying to push in those gated communities, you're probably going to have a lot of trouble. We see a lot of people who do reach out to us at that point to say, look, we just need to break down and just have you guys figure out what's going to work, break ground, do the market analysis, just make it work. And so we will give you that input, that feedback on, okay, well, here's the deal. And this is probably what needs to change in order for you to start to see the traction. And now some of our irrigation friends here who have different verticals in, let's say, a lawn care landscaping company, there's different dynamics. Maybe they do live in those gated communities. Maybe they are the breadwinners because of the income or the salary amount that's most relevant to them.
Yeah, because an irrigation tech is a higher revenue per employee, so they would be a higher price point.
Yeah.
So another thing about the geographics is your office. So I've experienced this personally with my Organize It office, is especially with interviewing. Mm-hmm. My Organize It office, again, I don't just own WootRecruit. I have a cleaning and organizing company, and our office is located where in our service area. But that can also affect your interviews. So like if you have a high no-show rate, because like during a certain time of the day, it could take me an hour and a half to get to my office. And literally, I think our office is only, how far would you say my office is from our house? 30 minutes?
30 minutes.
30 minutes. So I live where all of my employees live. I just want you to know that. And then for me to get to our office during the busy time of the day, it's an hour and a half versus 30 minutes on a Saturday or a Sunday. And so just because I need employees and my no-show rate is high, I didn't put into perspective when I rented my office years ago that my employee base is 30 minutes to the east, but it takes an hour and a half to get to this office. But that's where my customers lived, and that's where I want my Google address to be. But it affects your recruiting. And so that's something to think about when it comes to that, the geographic area as well. Not just where they live, but also where are you conducting the interviews? Will it affect your show rate, traffic, and those aspects as well?
And I'd love to kind of push into you a little bit there. What percentage of your total number of employees would you say lives in your actual client?
Area? None.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have a couple employees that live in Fort Myers, but they live North Fort Myers, but none of our employees live in the Fort Myers area that we actually, none live in the areas that we service. They live in the 3 surrounding cities of Fort Myers, like Cape Coral, North Fort Myers, and Lehigh. I live in Lehigh too, guys. But yeah, that's where my office is, and that affects our recruiting. It also affects our team meetings. Like I could just keep going on this topic. But geographics is huge when it comes to recruiting. When people think, I want to get a new office, I want to move offices, I want my office to be in my service location. Why? Your customers are never going to come to your office if you're doing home services.
And so there's a lot more under the hood that I could speak for hours on. If you're talking about the concept of geo arbitrage in terms of somebody who lives further out that lives in an area that's much cheaper, but to the degree that they're willing to travel further to work at a place at a higher income instead of working somewhere closer, which is a lower income setting, they're willing to, let's say, offset. And this goes both ways, is they're willing to offset where they live or where they're working for a more lucrative opportunity, whatever that opportunity means to them.
Yes.
For some people, it might mean it's closer to luxury. For others, it might be a more simple life. And I want to say there's the other side of it, because that comes into play too with the company. Geo arbitrage. It's where you choose to, make your stamp on your company. Are you right in the middle of your hotspot of your client base, or did you choose strategically to put somewhere in between where your applicants are located or your employees and your service area to create?
Yes. So if I had to do it all over again, I would choose a different location. I would choose a location that's more convenient for our current employees, for more meetings, more collaboration, and more convenient for applicants. I'd choose a hybrid between being more convenient for our employees and, on that line of close to our customer base.
Yeah. And I know of several discussions that I've had, hour-long discussions and multiple, where I actually sat down and I broke down these geographic, psychographic, demographics of where they are, because for some people, the traction just wasn't there until they started to shift what was happening under the hood. And it was all about geo arbitrage. It was all about repositioning themselves, almost like you're giving your company a facelift.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you just see things, the stars align, and suddenly you start to get momentum and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that.
Okay. What's our next topic? Because we could keep going on with this one.
Right. I think the next topic really is, in terms of driving results.
Because we talked about kind of the living situation, what can you sustain, as far as pay and that cost of living, whether it's head of households, do they have dependents, what are their expenses, and then also another great topic is the standard of living that they have kind of come into. And so this is a great topic too. Can your current offer keep up with the standard of living that they have come accustomed to?
Yes.
And so knowing what your avatar looks like, your ideal employee looks like, is something really powerful to have, because you would know that based off of if your job could keep up with that standard of living. So can you go a little bit deeper in that?
Yes. And so by standard of living and the pay, I think really is I've seen places where you have, let's say, Seattle and other areas where it's again, the cost of living, the economy is it can be very expensive for those areas. You might have people who are, let's say, uh, I'm trying to think through this here real quick without going too far into the weeds because again, I can go real deep, but uh, you know, just in the household themselves, and what's their living situation with do you have, let's say, a single family home, or do you have multiple people in the same household? Again, think generations. Does this person also live with their grandparents? Or the opposite side of it is in terms of those areas like Seattle or other major cities. Is that really going to the pay that you have? And let's just talk about entry level positions right now, or the frontline workers. Is that really going to drive them or compel them to stay with you? Even coming down to what their social standard is. I want to take Colorado, for example. What is their social standard in terms of the trends, and does this job really resonate with somebody who lives in that area, or are they there for more of a lifestyle? And do you need to position your job differently to speak to their lifestyle, separate from the work that's being done and other things like that? Finding ways to make it, like you said, this googly place to work.
So I will say that we have created our job to position with the lifestyle of our ideal avatar. And I'll tell you a story, or I'll give you an example. How do we do that? So I started Organize It 2014. I was just organizing myself because I needed flexibility in my lifestyle so that I could pick up the two boys from school, drop them off. I was going through a really bad separation, and I needed the flexibility so that I could be there at like the drop of a hat. And so as I grew Organize It, and then we added the cleaning division in 2017, I will say I honestly got away from why I started the company. I got a little bit too distracted with goals and like trying to keep up with everybody else. And it took a mentor to kind of bring me back and say, Libby, like, why did you start this? Like, what is your goal? And it was honestly to help parents be a parent. It's to create a lifestyle so people could have a great job, be appreciated, make a great wage, but also still be a great parent, be there, be present. And so our job, we've created it to be a lifestyle type of job where you can still be a great parent. So we use this in our ads for recruiting. Like, hey, like, do you want to be there for basketball games? Do you want to drop off your kids at school? Do you want to pick them up? Come earn a great wage at Organize It and still have the ability to be a great parent. So that is what we've did. We've kind of positioned it so that it fits the lifestyle of the person we're looking for, which is a great, someone that's really aspiring to be a great parent and be present. Do we have people that work for us that don't have children? Yes, of course. But that's kind of why I started it. And I need to get back to it. So we repositioned everything for that. And then what we did was we made windows of arrival time so that they weren't hard starts. So my employees now don't have to pay for before care for school. They can drop off their kids personally. Windows of arrival time for the second jobs and third jobs so that they have more flexibility. And then also, if we do pay for performance. So they're not at the job for an X amount of hours. As long as there's good quality, they can get done early. So some of our technicians are getting done at 3 or 4 o'clock. So they're making it home to either grocery shop or prepare dinner, and not rushing home at the 5 or 6 o'clock traffic and sitting in traffic for an hour and only seeing their kid for like 2 hours before they have to go to bed. And that is no kind of life to have whatsoever. So we created a lifestyle type of job because that ultimately was my why. So when Chris says, does it fit to the lifestyle of what you're trying to attract? That is my story of, we got away from it. We did. And we had to go back to it because that ultimately was why I created it. So lifestyle could be based off the area, like he said, a Denver, a Seattle, or lifestyle could be the type of person you're trying to attract through your job will attract that lifestyle.
Yes. Yes, because a person who, let's just give the example of living situations, is a person who needs to provide for somebody is going to have a completely different perspective than somebody who does not have any responsibilities or obligations when you're talking about the traditional sense of rent or other, very important payments like that, or debt, mainly with college students and things like that. If you have somebody who is working for the company and you're trying to position that lifestyle for them, really start to think about what's going to make them click, because it's going to be completely different from the others that you were just talking about in terms of providing for their family or being there. Completely different, but it's getting specific about who is your ideal employee avatar, who is that right person for your company, and make sure that it's not an ideal of your own. Make sure that it is the ideal of the person who's going to be doing the work.
Yes. So one great practice you can do, I've taught this a bunch of times, is you take your office or your leadership team. They each vote on who is their ideal employee. Pick your, typically you'd have 4 or 6 frontline technicians in this pot, and then you vote it down to two. And then you start to list all of the characteristics of those 2 employees. All the traits they have, what makes them, what makes them tick, what makes them special, what makes them be loved by everyone, whether they're customers or your office staff or the other technicians. And then between those, that brain dump of all of those things, you're going to start to see trends and commonality in the words that you're just dumping out. And you're going to start to kind of piece them together. And essentially, you're going to see words start to cross, like caring and passion. Are they the same? Essentially, they could be, or they couldn't. You're going to start to kind of hybrid some of them together, bucket them together, or actually say, empathetic and caring could be the same. So we're going to say caring instead. And then you're going to eventually come out with about 5 to 6 really strong characteristics of your ideal avatar. And you're going to use those in your recruiting. And it's what you look at, it's what you look for, because it embodies that ideal person that would be a great fit for your company. The characteristics that you can't train on, you can't teach. That's that practice. It's a little bit longer than that, but that's kind of how you come down to it. It'd be 4 to 6 words, characteristics of what that person looks like. So anything else? So we're going to wrap it up. We've been on for about 30 minutes. Chris, any last words on, really understanding what drives recruiting when it comes to these 3 buckets?
I think really just summing it up is making sure that at the end of the day is making sure that you're not trying to seek out your own ideals of what you want, but taking the time to really just sit there and transparently get a pulse on what it is that the employees actually want, or what really is underneath of it all. I think is just really important and really powerful to just have.
Yeah, I agree. I think my closing words are for this is, like Chris said, it's not what we want as owners. Take yourself out of that owner seat or owner box and look at it from the applicant's perspective. We always think that it's great because it's our business, it's our baby, and we came up with it. But when you look at it from the applicant's perspective, is it great? Do we pay good? Do we have good culture? And look at it from their perspective is really eye-opening. So I really encourage you to do that and go through your own recruiting process. Ask a friend to go through it. How does this look and how does this feel? And does this represent me, the owner? Because essentially we are the company. Does this represent me well or not? So ask someone to go through it for you and kind of give you some feedback, because I think sometimes we have a little bit of a misconception of how great our company is, because we always think ours is the greatest. So again, I'm Libby with WootRecruit, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to subscribe and share it. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching us on Facebook, make sure to like and follow us. Again, I'm Libby with WootRecruit, and we're the first ever recruiting program exclusively made for the service-based industry. Don't forget to subscribe also to our blog page if you're reading this on our website.